I'm going to start with the closed mouth, and then here at the end, I will be talking about how to work with teeth. To start with your lips, some of the parts of the mouth, this is your Cupid's bow, and this is what actually sits directly underneath your nose. And so a lot of times you'll have a cast shadow from your nose that comes into this Cupid's bow. Typically within the Cupid's bow, you're going to have some highlights here on the side. This part of the mouth, the upper lip, there's typically a highlight here because this actually comes out of the face, and then your lips come in. So if you were to look at the side of your mouth, let me find a darker pencil for you. If you were to look at the side of your mouth, your lips actually come inward from the side of your mouth, and then your lips, the bottom lip, comes out. So this is how it actually works. Okay, so this lip side view comes down, and that's why right here is where that little highlight comes out, because it protrudes. You typically have a highlight here too on the bottom lip, because that's where the light will actually shine onto the lip. So when you are looking at your face frontal, that kind of gives you an idea about why there is a highlight here and why there's typically a highlight here on the bottom of your lip. That's extremely important to know. The other thing that you need to realize is that the corners of the mouth are actually further away from you. They're back into your face, and so because of that, these are further away. This part is always coming forward, and so we always have some shading here on the corners of the mouth to push this part back into your face. There's always a shadow underneath your lip too, because just like I explained before, the bottom part of your lip comes out of your face, so naturally you're going to have a cast shadow underneath that lip that is going to come into your chin. Okay, so to start, we always start out with our H pencil or your lightest pencil, and we're going to go ahead and get this laid out with the H. I am drawing it smaller than the photograph in my sketchbook so that it doesn't take as long. If you need to, use a kneaded eraser to kind of lift out any mistakes that you have. Make sure that you are shading in part of that Cupid's bow here that actually needs to be included in this practice. So here's your Cupid's bow, and then you're actually going to have shading here. And to start, oh no, it looks like a mustache. It will get faded out. I'm just putting it here so that you guys realize that that actually needs to get shaded. And here's your highlighting here. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and take this H, and I am putting in some of the darkest areas and leaving the highlights. And we also know that those areas are going to get darker as we continue to adjust the darks with some of the darker pencils. The other thing to remember is that even though there's a highlight here on the top of the lip, believe it or not, the top lip is usually darker than the bottom because, like I said, your bottom lip or your top lip comes into the face downward when we were looking at that side view. And so usually our top lip is darker than the bottom. So remember that when you're putting on your shading. There is a lot of texture into the mouth, and right now I'm just trying to add some of those basic shadows before we talk about adding the texture. Corners of the mouth are always darker. The other interesting part about the lips is that here usually you have a soft edge here. There's no line here. Okay, so if you're drawing it where your mouth looks like this and you have drawn an entire circle around your mouth, okay, that's why, because you're seeing that there is a light here or a shadow here, but it actually doesn't connect back to the face. This is a really soft edge here, so make sure that when you're shading, that is a soft edge. Now down here, this is more of a harder edge shadow because the bottom of your lip actually comes out from your face. So this is smoothing into your face. Something else to remember too is that this is rounded, so I do like as best as I can to take my initial shading rounded here. It gets a little difficult to do because it's kind of a shorter space here, but just make sure that as you're doing that, you are smoothing as you go. And you are constantly looking at your reference to make sure that some of this texture and your placement of your values is correct. And a lot of times this highlight area is where you're going to get a lot of that texture showing up. So soft shadow here, again, soften that. It's interesting because the corners of the mouth are going to show emotion. So if you point them down, it's a little bit more of a relaxed look. The corners of the mouth raise when you're smiling or however your position is. This person seems to be a little bit more relaxed. So the corners of the mouth will come down. Depending on the person, the corners of the mouth too are naturally going to be raised or they're going to be lower and point downward. So make sure that you are watching that in your reference as well. And that's a way that you can kind of adjust the look of someone. Even just a slight change, very little change in the corners of the mouth make a big difference in the way that your portrait will be changing. I feel like I have quite a bit of the main values already laid out, so I'm going to go ahead and move to the darker pencils and actually add the contrast. Okay, we're going to talk really quickly about your teeth. And so I'm going to go ahead and just for the sake of the demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and grab the 2B and talk to you about how to actually get these teeth in. Before I do that, I want you to realize that your mouth, this part, is here. It connects here. This is your Cupid's bow. It comes right underneath your nose. And then typically the corners of your mouth are in line with your eye. So your corners of your mouth is probably somewhere out here. Okay. And so that's kind of how your mouth will sit in with your nose. Okay. What I need you to know about teeth is you actually don't draw these. These are very light shadows. So typically when you do teeth, for the sake of the demo, I can give you a little thing with your 2B just so it's a little darker so you can see. But basically when you draw teeth, you're actually going to shade in the gum line. And so you're shading the gum line in, and you can kind of lightly draw a line down, but you really are going to come back and almost work with negative space. So you're working with the bottoms of the teeth and how those shadows come up into the teeth. And what will happen is this will actually create an implied line of the sections of your teeth. And then with your lightest shadow, your lightest pencil, you can shade these sections in. Depending on, how wide the mouth is open. And obviously you can see that your lips are going to create a cast shadow onto the teeth. So a lot of times back here is going to be really, really dark. Once you get the teeth shaded on the gum line and underneath the teeth, you could take an H pencil and you could very lightly do very light shading on the teeth themselves, especially on the front ones where they're brighter because they're more forward. The ones back here are going to be a little darker because they're further back in the mouth. The other thing that you can need to recognize, especially on this photo, there is highlights from your teeth. Obviously, your teeth are wet. They're inside your mouth. And so you might have some bright white highlights showing on the teeth. That's why there's a little shadow here. Make sure that you are adding those into the teeth as you're shading and just checking your values. But start out by just drawing in the tops of the gum line like this and the bottoms of the teeth. And then you can come back and very lightly separate them with a very light shadow.